that you have. And now moving to collaboration, I believe this particular project is not a standalone. You're collaborating with other partners. And I just want you to bring our audience to understand exactly how every stakeholder is playing in making sure that these projects actually go to the places that they need to be.
Yeah. If you go to the SDG number 17, talks about partnerships.
Yes.
And so at the ATPS, we also take cognizance of that, the need for partnership. So we know that AI, being an emerging technology, will need a lot of partnerships. And that's why we try to reach out to organizations that will provide some complementary roles to the work that ATPS is doing. But permit me to talk about the first partnership starts with our donor, the people that are bringing the money. And we want to use the opportunity to thank the International Development Research Center in Canada, the Royal Crown, for making the funds that we are in partnership with SIDA, Sweden, for making available the funds that we are using to undertake this massive project in Africa. Last time I was on national television in KBC, that was last week, and they were asking me, why is it that the fund is coming from outside Africa? This could be a discussion for another day. Mm-hmm. But that boils down to what I'm talking about, policy, and the commitment that our national governments will need to make to support emerging technologies. So we thank IDRC and SIDA for making available the funds that we are using to undertake this project in Africa. Then, like I was saying before, we recognized ICIPE here in Nairobi, and Kumasi Hive, based in Ghana. Kumasi Hive has commercialized the artificial intelligence and linked it to so many other sectors like agriculture, transport, and so on. And because they have already had experience in translating the research output into innovations, and innovation come with money. You can have a product, and it can only be an innovation when it's in the market yielding money for you. Mm-hmm. So we recognize the deep knowledge from ICIPE in this sector as well. So we are collaborating with both of them, and both have been so wonderful in playing the synergetic role that we expect from them to support the research, policy, and practice work that ATPS is doing in this AI, advancing AI, homegrown AI in Africa. So the partnership amongst these two organizations that I've mentioned, and it is because of what they offer on the table to complement the work of the ATPS.
Great. I'm glad you mentioned the SDG number 17, yes, that really speaks about partnerships. And of course, there has to be different moving pieces to make everything happen.
Exactly.
So thank you for sharing that. And to Joel, of course, Africa has always been seen as a continent that is, struggling through many challenges. And very recently, I was part of the Africa Climate Summit, and we had a youth segment. And what we were trying to do is really paint a different narrative about Africa, showing that we are solutions providers and not just victims, whether it's on climate change issues, whether it's poverty, etc. And of course, all of us are thinking about how we can improve the quality of life. And I think the world will be surprised at just how knowledgeable we are and how much we have to offer. So, in your experience with the project, would you say AI can be, a bridge to where we want to be, especially with, of course, responsible and homegrown solutions and innovations? Like, what role do you feel that this particular artificial intelligence could play in taking us to the place that we want to be and painting a different narrative of what Africa is?
Thank you, Abigail. I can say confidently that my belief in Africa has doubled, seeing what Africans can do. And this belief is buttressed by the developments that have taken place and also the interactions. ATPS ably directed by the executive director sitting down here, believes in Africa. Dr. Nicholas believes that we should, allow Africans develop what Africans need. So we were intentional by making sure that the decolonial approach was followed, a demand-driven approach, which is what will take Africa to where it is. It's not just developing the AI tools, but developing AI tools that are prioritized to meet the needs of Africa. And so we interacting with the people. It will interest you to note that right from the start of the project, we were intentional by making sure that the teams were equitably distributed. It was not just research. Before we always have research. So we had research member of the team, we have the private sector, and we have the civil society actor in a team for each of the grantees that we had. So we could see that synergy working out. So Africa has the potentials once we can ensure that synergy, not working independently, but working as a team. The researchers working with the private sector actors, with the civil society actors, because each person contributes something on the table. The civil society actors have worked with the locals and also know how to mainstream some of these things around. So because of this, we can see a pathway to acceptability that has increased so much. Because let me just share our experience just yesterday and a question we posed to the women, because basically the women, 20 of them, we asked them, this project, you have been taken along in this project since September 2022, and now, how do you feel? And they said, we now feel belonged. We now feel that our voices are being heard, that the technology we want to use is our technology and not their technology. That was their statement. And they were so joyous that say, are we coming back? Are we going to leave them? We said, we are not leaving. So they're excited because for the first time, we have an approach we call design by inclusion. Where the people contribute to development, where the people influence what you are producing. And that is what is being done. And so with that approach, I believe that we will get there. Especially I pray that also the governments, the people in power, understand the need to take the people along. There was someone that said that when they want to go to power, they come for the people. But when they get to power, they leave the people. So if we recognize that the people matters in any process, we will get there. So I believe seriously that we have the capability and we have everything to make Africa great. And the youths are the strength of Africa.
Absolutely, absolutely. We say we our I don't know how big the population is, but I'm imagining it's about 60 to 70% of young people who occupy the continent of Africa. And I agree with you that we are the future of Africa. And taking you back to your experience working with the women, in this line of work I always hear conversations on indigenous knowledge or homegrown knowledge, and I want to understand whether it has had a role in any way with your project in how you design or how you come up with solutions, especially for the farmers. Have you interacted with this kind of indigenous knowledge with regards to how they farm, and then does it form basis for those technologies that you develop?
Yeah, thank you very much. Yes, the grantees have made sure that their development have centered around what the farmer needs. And the farmer have also contributed to how the technology should be developed. For instance, the IoT system in Malawi is such that the farmer joins in data input and data collection. And the farmer is well trained to also interpret data.
Mhm.
The IoT irrigation system in Nigeria is designed that if there is no data, you can use SMS to activate your irrigation system right from your home.
Mhm.
So through SMS, you can receive the nutrient content of the soil in your farm. Through SMS, you can receive the nitrogen, phosphorus, potassium, soil moisture, temperature in your farm. And also through that SMS, you can activate a mechanical valve. It's actually a mechatronic valve that will start irrigating your farm. So the farmers were specific that because of the low data infrastructure, they don't really have this network. So they said, we will also want you, as you're developing this, to make sure that we can use the available infrastructure to access. And that is how the voice of the farmer. So it was not like just a cloud deployment, cloud monitoring. So they can also access information via SMS. So that is how we did it.
Great. Thank you so much for sharing that. And I think it's important to mention that all these projects have actually been developed here in Africa. And I think it's very important to note that these are solutions that have been done by people here in Africa. And of course, we could speak about AI the whole day, but we actually have to wrap up. And so, as we finalize, to you, Dr. Nicholas, how can people be involved, or how can people support the work that you're already doing? Because as you've said, it's quite an emerging sector or an emerging issue, and of course people are still not very, I even speak for myself, we still don't really understand how AI works and the technology. And I believe there has to be a platform where we can learn more and even interact with the work that you do. So how can we find you? How can we reach you?
Thank you very much. Already people are getting engaged. You can hear him, Engineer Joel, talk about the design by inclusion work that we are currently doing in Nigeria.
Mm-hmm.
So these are the people, especially these are the targeted beneficiaries of this technology. So they're already participating. They're already giving out their voices, and they are happy that they are part of this transformation that is happening. And once you have their voice or their voices included in the technology development, what I can assure you as an extensionist is that that technology, they will see it as their own, and they will grab it, they will work with it, they will promote it with their friends, and before you know it, you get mass adoption. So already people are getting involved. And this is just in Nigeria, but in all the countries where we have these 10 projects, that is the same way we are, the same approach we are using to ensure that people's voices are included in the development of this homegrown responsible AI. Again, we have held so many webinars around this AI, which we promote, which we advertise, and we have had always a lot of people joining to learn about the AI and how it can be developed and deployed. A lot of partners have also used the same platform that we are using to disseminate what we call knowledge exchange, knowledge management about this AI, because we know it's not yet so popular. So we need to talk about it. So people get engaged, even on social media. I told you that last week I was at KBC talking about the same AI. And ever since then, I've had a lot of calls, people calling to say, that's good, we want to work with you. We continue to do this all the time, but the key stakeholder, and I mean, some of us have been invited. I've been invited to several events to give a keynote paper regarding AI. I just did one even last week, the same last week, for the Africa Leaks, talking about AI in agriculture. The most important stakeholder in this transformation journey will be the government and the private sector. Government, because we want them to set the pace. We want them to create what we call enabling environment for this AI research, innovation, practice to happen. And I can tell you that not many African governments have keyed into this. As we speak, out of the 54 African countries on the continent, it's only 2 countries that have AI policy. That is Rwanda and Ghana. And you see, if you don't have AI policy, how will you allow people who have the skills to develop drones? Let me use drones because our project in Cape Verde is also developing drones. In Kenya here, you can't fly a drone. If you fly it, it will be shot down because the policy has not allowed it. But in Rwanda, neighboring Rwanda, they are using drones to deliver healthcare services to areas that are not accessible by road. So, because they have a guideline, a framework for the deployment of the drone in their country. So, the government is very important as a stakeholder. They need to do convenings. They need to convenings like workshops. They need to support organizations like us to even conduct workshops, talk about AI across sectors and how it can be deployed. They need to now mainstream it into their policies within the currently we have STI policy, STI Act. See how they bring agencies responsible to talk about this, because you see, we cannot be left behind. If you say it doesn't concern you, by the time these technologies are developed in Rwanda and you have to buy it, it will be too costly for you. So the earlier you join now to work with a local capacity, the better for you. The private sector is another important stakeholder. We've talked about farmers at lower level, but the private sector, industrialists need to invest. But you remember, their investment will be driven by how the enabling environment is. If there are importation of some infrastructure that may be used for this AI development, and it is you have high tax on such infrastructure, it will be a disincentive for such a private sector, for such a businessman. And I will use one example to illustrate this. The International Finance Corporation, IFC, sometime in the early 2000s, had supported Ghana and Kenya on solar home system development. Because of the enabling environment provided during the Kibaki regime, there was a kind of zero tax on the importation of solar materials, as against the nearly 30 to 40% tax on the importation of similar solar materials in Ghana. This has led to a massive adoption of solar home system in Kenya because investors moved in, brought the materials, and people. So the dissemination, the adoption of solar home system in Kenya actually became the highest in the whole of Africa. In short, if you compare it with per capita, it was even higher than China. Do you understand?
Mm-hmm.
So you find that the government must play a role by showing their goodwill that these things are working well in Rwanda is because the president, you can hear even from him, talk about science, technology, and innovation. This, even Kenya, need to begin to think of developing a separate ministry of science, technology, and innovation because as at the moment, we don't have it.
Mm-hmm.
That would be a discussion for another day. But this is very important because that has helped many other countries to focus on STI development. Kenya is doing well anyway in the area of investment because in the 1980 Lagos Plan of Action, where the heads of state in Africa agreed that 1% of their GDP should be invested in research and development. Many years, 50-something years later, as we are, there's no country that has done that.
Mm-hmm.
1% of their GDP. What we have, Kenya is among the top countries investing up to 0.78 or 0.8% of their GDP. And they are targeting through the Constitution, Vision 2030, to invest up to 2%, which is very good. And this is directly correlated to innovativeness. The more you have research, you have money in research, the more outputs, the more products and services that you get.
Mm-hmm.
So I've used this to illustrate it so that our government can put in more interest, talk about AI, invest resources, build capacity, build infrastructure, and make policies and regulations that will guide the development, deployment, and scaling of homegrown and responsible artificial intelligence for agriculture and food systems in Africa. Thank you.
I think that message is home. That message is very much home.
Thank you.
You know, calling for governments to create an enabling environment for, you know, AI and also every other thing to prosper. And to you, Joel, as we wrap up, being that you work very closely with these innovators and on this project, what would you say is the future of Africa's food and food systems or agriculture with AI in play?
Well, again, I would say the future is bright and it's still dependent on what Dr. Nicholas mentioned. You can see the funding that drives this process is coming from external. And someone queries, why will a father allow another father to feed his family? It is only an irresponsible head of family that will allow another person to supply food, and he thinks he will have control over his family. And that is why today you can see the high rate of youths leaving Africa. So for there to be a responsible development, deployment, and scale of artificial intelligence in agriculture, which is very, very important, agriculture and food systems. Because whether you are a researcher, whether you are a broadcaster, whether you are an oil driller, whether you're getting oil from the ground, you must eat to get the energy to work. So agriculture is the driver. We don't doubt that. So there must be an intentional investment in research and innovation. There must be clear pathway to fund local development and deployment of AI. We cannot continue to depend on foreign donors who will also determine likely how we run our affairs. So the future is bright, but we must drive the process, leveraging on what we have. The strength of the youths. I want to thank the youths of Africa for what they are doing, and leverage on the women who are eager to solve our problems. We want to support them at all levels to make sure that we get there. The future is bright indeed.
Great. Well, thank you so much. This was such a lovely conversation, and I believe it's only the beginning. And I hope our listeners will gain more interest in this
Sure.
particular conversation, and we will be back here in less than a year to talk about impact, maybe.
Thank you, Abigail.
Great. Thank you so much for your time. It was lovely having you. See you on the next one. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.